All right. I sent you that comment the person had made. Did you get it?
Yeah, yeah, I saw that. I need to send that to a friend of mine. That's an interesting observation. Yeah,
He
because
did.
you are supposed to circumcise your slaves.
Yeah, he did a deeper dive into it, and it's actually funny. I didn't send that second part, but he tracked down when did this become a thing and who were the people behind it, and it was, of course, all Jewish, Jewish doctor, Jewish people, and then. One of the people connected to this was actually living with Karl Marx.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Quite
Yeah, the
fascinating.
nicest interpretation of all that is, the Jewish doctors felt it was more hygienic, so they recommended it for everybody simply out of their understanding of hygiene with
Except,
at the time. And then the most conspiratorial one, of course, is they just want you got to circumcise your slaves, so got to make sure your slaves are circumcised.
we'll talk about it actually. I'll probably bring it up in the episode, might be interesting for people. All right, so we're back for chapter 17. Oh, so he is already Abraham and the covenant of circumcision. Oh, this is probably where he
This is where
changes
he
Abraham.
names him
Ah,
Abraham.
okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So where we left off last was the conception of Ishmael through Sarai's terrible idea and Abram's terrible decision to go along with it, and the pregnant slave girl, running away, and God coming to her and blessing her and sending her back. It's a good episode. I think the last episode was really good.
Yeah,
If you haven't
yeah,
seen it, I think you should go back and watch it.
definitely. And also, if you're new here, subscribe and support the channel. All right, let's
Even if you don't
go.
like us, subscribe and support us anyway, especially if you hate us.
Yeah, I see a lot of mixed comments actually. There are some very nice ones and some that are extremely kind of get mad at us, especially at me because of my non conventional views. And then I love the ones
Right.
where they're just like, they try to tell you how Christian they are while sounding extremely demonic in the way of the approach. You're like, well, you sound very Christian. But yeah, but overall, comments are fun.
I love the hate comments. They're my favorite.
I saw you got a little bit of hate by association. Someone thought you were Armenian.
Me? Armenian? I'm not Armenian.
I know
I don't think I have
they thought you were Armenian and
any
they were hating
Armenian.
on you for being
I mean,
Armenian.
I kind of look Armenian. Do I look Armenian? What would you say?
You could pass. I mean, but you could pass for many things. I mean, you have dark hair, fair skin, skin. You could
When I traveled
pass
around
for
the
many.
Mediterranean, every country I went in, people thought I was from there. Right? From Greece to Turkey, Italy, Spain. I'm just very Mediterranean look because I'm part Italian, half
Oh, I
Serbian.
didn't know that. Oh, I actually did not know that. Oh, you have Serb in you? That's
You did?
cool. I
Yeah,
think maybe it's just been so long that I forgot. Okay, cool. I love
probably.
Serbian people. The
I've
Italians
had
too.
Nikola Tesla blood in me.
The That's funny you say that because I have traveled the world and every country I have been to pretty much thought I was one of theirs. And of course, I can change skin and color. Like right now, it's summer, I'm much darker. I can go blonde, I can go pale.
Are you
So
saying you're a shapeshifter? Are you a
I'm a
reptilian?
shapeshifter. Without the benefits, I'm a reptilian.
Oh,
Without the
jeez.
financial benefits, I want it.
You got kicked out of the Illuminati.
Yeah. All right. Should we
Okay,
start reading?
back to the scripture.
Yeah.
We should
Okay.
start off with lots of tangents. I think it's more
Hey,
entertaining.
I'm
All right,
sure it
so we're
is.
going to be talking about penises in this episode. I hope everybody's ready.
All right,
That's how you
circumcision.
should start. You should clip it like that.
Oof, it's a little bit too
Okay,
vulgar for my taste. All right.
Abraham and the covenant of circumcision. So, chapter 17. When Abram was 99 years old, so this is 11 years No, 13 years since the last chapter. I think it was 86 when Ishmael was born.
Was he?
So,
Okay.
yeah,
Hold on, now I want
13
to
years
check
later.
real quick. He was 86. Oh, yeah.
Yep, 86. So 11 years later, um, God shows up again. So we can see God's like not always showing up. Sometimes there's long periods of time before he arrives. When Abram was 99 years old, and the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty. Uh, the exact word here is El Shaddai, which is all powerful, right? So
Mm-hmm.
God of power, basically saying, I am the God of power.
Mm-hmm.
Walk before me and be blameless, that I may make my covenant between me and you, and may multiply you greatly. Then Abram fell on his face, clumsy. And God said to him, no, I think he was scared. I mean, this is the God of power, so he fell on his face. And God said to him, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer shall your name be Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make you into nations, and kings shall come from you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your offspring after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant to be God to you and to your offspring after you. And I will give to you and your offspring after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. Do we want to comment here or just finish off the section?
I think let's finish up the section.
Okay. And God said to Abraham, now, as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your offspring after you throughout their generations. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and your offsprings after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. Dun, dun, dun. You shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised, every male throughout your generations, whether born in your house or bought with your money from any foreigner who is not of your offspring. Both he who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money shall surely be circumcised. So shall my covenant be in your flesh, an everlasting covenant. Any uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant.
8 days old. For a weird, random thing to just throw in there. All right, let's go from the top for a second. Shifts names, and then he will be the forefather of many nations, father of multitudes of nations. It says offspring, so he already has one son, but you know there's gonna be more. And then doesn't say anything about that, the old son, the new son, the whatever. It just kind of says offspring, which is interesting. And then this covenant is just I would love to hear the Jewish explanation of this. I'm sure I have before, I just don't remember because it was so long ago. But it is an odd thing to to bring up. You're 8. Why do you need to play with an 8-year-old's thingaling? Why do you need to castrate? Because it's a castration of
Well, not
sorts
full
in a way.
castration, but
Not a fool, but it's a little bit like it's like almost inserting power. Like
it's a
you're
little off
messing
the
with
top.
somebody's private parts. It's like
Right.
asserting
Right.
dominance. You're definitely messing with someone's private parts when they have no say in it. They're 8 days old. They didn't make this decision. It's just you're born and that is done to you. I just find something doesn't settle well for me.
Mm-hmm.
But after you give your explanation, I have to share a comment that someone made on my other channel that will
Sure.
fit
Sure.
really well here.
Well, there is. I mean, you can write a whole book on the meaning behind circumcision, and I'll do my best to try to cover a lot of different perspectives here. Um, Yeah, why cut off the foreskin of penises? What why does God want that? That just sounds odd, strange. Even, probably even for that time period. I mean, why that? So to understand this from the first level, before we get to some metaphysical concepts, but to understand this from the level one, you have to understand that during this time period in this area, um, markings on your body were common to associate yourself with certain tribes and religions, right? And a tribe and a religion and a nation, they were all the same thing. There's no such thing as like, a multicultural, multi-religious society. If you're a part of a tribe or a city, you were part of the rituals and the religion that was uh, instituted there. If you didn't want to participate, then you weren't part of the tribe, right? And it was very common for markings, particularly tattoos, to be given on people so that you would know, oh, I belong to this tribe. I practice this religion. I worship this god. I sacrifice to these gods. And tattoos are the most common, but also scarification could be used. So that's where you cut yourself in a certain way, and a scar shows up, and it's there for the rest of your life.
Branding,
Um,
yeah.
Branding, yeah, usually more for slaves, but possibly also used for other purposes as well. But the point is that having a visible marking to declare to everyone around you that you belong to this particular tribe was incredibly common, right? And in fact, later on in the Bible, where there's a verse that prohibits tattooing, that people misinterpret it saying, oh, no one's supposed to ever get tattoos. What it's actually saying is prohibiting you from getting a marking declaring that you're part of any faith or any tribe, even Yahweh, right? Even this tribe here. So when you understand that, this is the same thing. God comes to Abraham or Abram, and he appears to him. So Abram's visually seeing him, right? Says, "I'm the God of power." Blah 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 blah. Gonna give you, your offspring, tons of nations. Blah blah blah. And here's your mark, right? Abraham says, "Okay, what is it? Is it, a tattoo of a rainbow or a unicorn or a little cross
Butterfly
X
on
on
the
my
ankle.
shoulder?" Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And God says, "No, I'm going to give you a mark that no one can see, right? Your private parts. The
Sneaky,
only person who ever
sneaky.
sees that, yeah, the only person who will ever see that is your spouse, and your parents when they do it to you as an infant. But
And
the
the
idea
rabbi.
is, yeah, you are not supposed to publicly declare, you know, what tribe you're with. This is a marking that's private between you and God, in the most private place possible, most secret place possible. I mean, even Jesus says that don't be like the Pharisees who go and pray out in public, but instead go into your closet and pray in solitude, where you and your father, only your father sees you, right? So this is the most intimate possible marking you can have. So I kind of want to emphasize that, because when you understand the markings that existed in this time period, you can understand how this is something that's unique, and why this is being done as something private. Um, in the previous episode, we talked about God's people is supposed to spread throughout the world, right, to heal the world. And if you're marked on the outside, oh, I'm a Christian or Jew, or whatever, that's going to be more difficult for you to be able to spread throughout the world to heal the world. So your marking is supposed to be private. And later on, in the New Testament, and even before that, actually, there is talk about the circumcision of the heart, which is the idea that the most private spiritual part of you that nobody sees, your own heart, your own mind, your spirit, that should have a covenant with God, right? And
Mm.
if you were to have a tattoo on your forehead that says, I am Yahweh's slave, it's going to be hard for you to spread throughout the world and heal it. So this is private marking.
So, some thoughts, random here and there, because I always say in almost every episode, outcomes matter. So if we look at Judaism today, it is an exclusive club. It is not a spread Judaism, get everybody involved. Like if anybody wants to become a Jew, it's literally like some crazy impossible rituals and years and whatever, all the way down to like you submit to slave level. To me it feels like, but it's not like Christianity when they're just like here's the Bible, let me save your soul, or Islam just kind of like I'll kill you. Become Islamic, become a Muslim. It's really funny. I have fun with these comments, and then people Muslims get so riled up. The so it's a Judaism is a very exclusive club.
If you do not agree with the religion of peace, will kill you. It's counterintuitive. Don't say that, people. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly. The religion of peace and tolerance is extremely intolerant and aggressive, and then Judaism is very exclusive. So it's not like trying to spread love and Judaism and all this stuff. And then if you look at other outcomes and conspiracies, right? There's definitely a very sneaky and deceitful thing that happens with the Jewish elites, like let's call them Zionists, just to differentiate between, Jews as people and the reptilian, overlords, the elite club. But those are definitely very kind of sneaky, deceitful, chameleon. They change names and identities. They change religions just to fit into, infiltrate nobility. They use their women to infiltrate nobility and so on and so forth. They use blackmail, all sorts of stuff that happens in that world that is very interesting to me, because when I read the Bible, sometimes I see the parallels. I see that behavior. And then sometimes I go listen to rabbis and I'm like, oh, yeah, they too see it the way I see it, and they're proud of it. So there's definitely an element of that that's just as a person, as an outsider, that looks very deceitful, not welcoming, and not godly at all. Like, not godly. But anyway, I spoke a lot, but if you have any comments on that, you can.
I mean, we mentioned in the last episode, and I covered it briefly, that if you're going to heal the world, you need to infiltrate the world to heal it. That tactic of infiltrating the world can be done either for good or for evil, right? It can be done for your own benefit, or it can be done to try to, again, God tells his people to be sojourners, to travel around, because they're supposed to, over time, heal the world. And we talk about this a lot, how rabbinical Judaism of today is not the same as Second Temple Judaism or First Temple. We're not even at the First Temple yet, right? This is early stuff, right? And the religion changes over time. And after Christ, there was a split between those who said that Christ was the Messiah and those who didn't. And those who say that Christ is the Messiah believe in spreading throughout the world to heal the world. Those who say that Christ isn't the Messiah kind of act as an exclusive club, and there's differentiation between us and them, right? Like, they see themselves as still separated. I'm not going to say they all think that they're superior, but they see themselves as separated from the rest of people, Gentile and Jew. Right? Yeah. While the Christian Jews, right? The Christians believe that there is no difference between Jew and Gentile, slave and free man, man and woman. We all can be one in Christ.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If you want to finish your thought, unless.
Well, I was going to shift on to a few other things here with the circumcision.
Oh, okay. I do. That reminded me, as you were talking, of something. You said something about Judification of. So basically, to go incognito, to be able to, spread that. And it's really interesting, because I was doing some research and came across this interesting archive that says 1001 quotes that pretty much is about Jews or said by Jews, or it was just basically everything in that 1001 quote system would be considered anti-Semitic and in today's standards. And I was curious, where is this coming from? And I started researching a couple of them. every single one of them, ChatGPT was saying, oh, it is made up anti-Semitic hoax, right? And then, of course, I went and found majority of them because I was like, that's just statistically impossible. Like somebody just sat there and made up quotes when there's actual sourcing given, like this magazine, this year, this, issue. So I found one of them that fits the exact same thing you were just talking about. Let me see if my screen can capture that. I think so, yeah. So it says, I would have to go back to figure out this guy's name, but he was a rabbi who published a book. Where is his name? It says, I'm devoting my lectures here in this Terrytown seminar to a discussion of the possibility that we are now entering a Jewish century, a time when the spirit of community, the non-ideological blend of the emotional and the rational, and the resistance to categories and forms will all emerge through the forces of anti-nationalism to provide us with a new kind of society. I call the process the Judaization of Christianity because Christianity will be the vehicle through which the society becomes Jewish. What? What? Let me see if I can. Ooh, Rabbi.
I mean, in a particular way, he's not wrong, but from a Christian perspective, but Christianity sees itself as the continuation of all of these stories. Like it is the correct continuation of the chosen people of God, spreading throughout the world because all people can be God's children or are God's children, and they can all be saved, right? In a way, you could say that's making them Jewish, but it depends on your interpretation of that.
Yeah, but it is funny because obviously there's this notion. I was listening to another rabbi who basically thinks that Christianity should be annihilated because Christianity is Amalek, right? Like basically, it's wrong and you gotta eradicate it.
2 billion Christians, which are idol worshippers, between Chinese, Hindus, Buddhists, and Christian, at least 6.5 billion people are idol worshippers that according to the Torah do not have the right to live. Idol worshipper goy, it's death penalty. Even a goy who bow down to an idol, who believe in JC, deserve death penalty.
So then you just come across these kind of things. So from a Christian perspective, you're like, excuse me, what? So you're just, it just sounds like there's a whole lot of war being waged against it. And then from their perspective, it's justified because they're spreading whatever the hell through anti-nationalism, which is we're seeing today. We're seeing anti-nationalism everywhere, right? The more communist view of society, and then he's calling that Judification. So very, very interesting. But another thing that I wanted to quickly point out to was this comment a guy made. He said, Revelation alert, bro. I know I already commented on this video, but I just made a crazy connection with reading the same exact 1901 Jewish encyclopedia. I came across circumcision and was reading through, and it said something that he didn't basically know, that the Jewish tradition, whether born into their household or not, the slaves will be circumcised. He was like, I wonder if circumcision was a practice in the US before the turn of 20th century, because I know this is when the Zionists had taken control of the government. And wow, circumcision was not common practice in the United States until the turn of 20th century, which explains so much. Why the hell are we circumcised as Christians if nowhere in the New Testament does it say that we should be? Because we are their slaves. And then later he did more research into it, and apparently the very first doctor that brought that into America was a Jewish doctor and was connected to Karl Marx.
I love me conspiracies. I love reading all different conspiracies, and lots of them contradict each other. But yeah, I mean, historically, circumcision didn't really exist much in America and the West until around the turn of the century. And medically, a lot of doctors and leading doctors in America, the West, were Jewish, and they believed that circumcision was very hygienic. It was better, just overall for multiple reasons that they believed at the time, and so they
How?
recommended it,
I mean, what
and
was
it
their
became very
real
common.
what was their real argument on that? Because majority of the world doesn't do that, and nobody's non
Yeah,
hygienic.
and
There's no issue.
y- yeah, the argument is that it keeps from infections from happening. It's cleaner because and that you will still hear that today if you go on like social media pages that are anti-circumcision, right? There'll be arguments, and people say, "Oh no, it's more hygienic," and people say that's bullshit. It's not more hygienic. But that was the argument being made at the time, the turn of the century, and it became very common practice. And of course, you can build a conspiracy out of that if you want to. That what's really going on is that we
You're
Gentiles are
marking
actually
your
the slaves,
slaves.
so based upon the commandments of God, we have to be circumcised too.
Well, the funny thing is, if you listen to their rabbis, they absolutely flat out say these kind of things that the Jews gonna rise when the prophecy fulfills. Everybody's gonna be Jews' slaves. The Gentiles will be serving Jews. So yeah, this is not a conspiracy. They say these things out loud, and then they only call it a conspiracy if I say it under a negative light. If I was Jewish and I said, Jews going to control the world and everybody's going to be their slaves, they would applaud you and say, yeah. But if you're saying it as a criticism, kind of like, I don't like this, then you're an anti-Semite. But
No, there's a lot of Jews that believe that. There are a lot that don't, but
of
there
course,
are a lot
obviously,
more that believe it that people that understand. There's quite a large, I would say, plurality. They're quiet, not the majority, but especially when you consider all the Jews in the world,
yeah,
there is a large segment that does believe that completely, and sometimes they'll say it out loud. If you watch some of their speeches or videos. Um,
yeah. The wow, something just.
well,
Oh, it's just there was something in my mind that I was gonna say, and it's just escaped me.
I'll talk some more about
Conspiracy.
circumcision and see if it comes
Okay.
back to your mind because I've got
Okay.
a few more things I want to say about that. So we covered the fact that this is a mark of you're belonging to this God, to Yahweh, but it's supposed to be private and hidden so that nobody can see it, right? Because you're a sojourner, you're supposed to travel throughout the world, and you're supposed to heal the world, right? That's the Christian understanding of this. There's a few more levels to this, and this is not coming from a traditional Christian. This is more kind of your more esoteric or mystical thoughts. A lot of it, my own thoughts here, but in a lot of more Eastern philosophy, you have to understand that the sexual energy is life itself. It is God's energy, but it's powerful and it has to be used properly because that energy will produce life, right? That energy that comes out of the sacral chakra, you could call it even, if you want to go that far, as God's energy. That's life there. And what circumcision does to a man when we remove the foreskin, the glands are the most sensitive part that's underneath the foreskin. When you remove the foreskin, those become desensitized, right? The penis actually becomes less sensitive because it's
Interesting.
rubbing against your clothing, right? And so the head of the penis is insanely sensitive, which is why it's protected by foreskin. When you remove the foreskin, the head of the penis, because of friction on clothing, eventually gets desensitized. It is not as sensitive. And so sex actually will feel less pleasurable for a circumcised person than for an uncircumcised person because their glands have been desensitized. Um, there's an argument to be made here that there's a practical reason that comes from circumcision as well. Because it's desensitizing the penis, it reduces the pleasure of sex. One of the most important parts of maintaining a tribe is to make sure that you're not having bastard children all over the place. Because if you're having bastard children and you're not having a family dynamic, and eventually that tribe's going to fall apart. And so you really have to control your tribe, your people's sexual urges. And you got to remember, these are people who probably have an IQ of around 80, maybe. Like the average person at this time period is not super well educated. They only know what they were taught growing up.
That's what we
If you've ever
think,
traveled
but
with, if you ever travel to a third world country, wonderful people, but sometimes, they're not like people in first world countries, right? So you have to really put some strict boundaries on your tribe to make sure that they behave. So long story short here, you're reducing the sensitivity, which means that helps reduce the urge to procreate with, outside of marriage, so you don't have bastard kids. It makes masturbation more difficult. If you have foreskin, you can masturbate anytime you want. Sorry to be explicit here, but we're talking about penises. When you remove that, it's more difficult. So that means you have less likely chance that your males in your tribe are going to become addicted to masturbation and expending their sexual energy, which disconnects them from the ability to connect with God because they're using it up all the time. And so they become less of a chance to get addicted to that. So there's actually practical things that could come of this for a tribe out in the desert if you're trying to maintain proper dynamics, make sure that there's not sexual rebellion going on, make sure you don't have bastard kids. There's actually a practical reason that comes from this circumcision practice. And there's a spiritual dynamic there too, that you're not wasting your sexual energy, which is connected to God's energy, because God is life. And if you're expelling that all the time, anyone will tell you, even if you're not spiritual, you feel drained, at least as a man does, if he's expending his sexual energy by himself repeatedly, addictively. He's going to feel drained, fog-headed, and, it affects you. And so this helps reduce that in your tribe. Okay. End story there.
So that's actually interesting, because that's what I had forgotten, that I was trying to recall, to wonder if that does that, like it does anything for sex, because in some African countries, in some Islamic countries, they do that to women, just so that basically it decreases that the urge or the drive or the pleasure or whatnot.
Yeah, female circumcision, it can either be as minimal as just cutting the outer labia to the inner labia as well. Also, sometimes completely removing the clitoris. So just completely
it's just
removing,
barbaric.
the ability. Yeah, and
I think it's barbaric and extremely
an
invasive.
It's more of an African practice. The Islamic nations in Africa, you don't see it.
Yeah, like Somalia, for example,
Saudi Arabia.
does that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't see it in the other places.
Yeah, I mean, depends. There are some Islamic places that are very secular, so obviously, you're not going to see it there. But for this one, it's so invasive. It's insane. It's just like, to me, it's outrageous, because while you're a helpless child, someone is making a decision about you, for you, that will forever alter your, I don't know, let's call it biology or something in your life, right? Because I'm not convinced that whatever they thought it's doing, let's say maybe causing it to be less addictive, I'm not so sure that's working, because if I zoom out in the world and look at all the ancient cultures that still practice Christianity in very ancient traditional ways, there's no circumcision, none of that. And then I come to the West, where, everybody's just somehow, like, that Judification has entered into the culture, where, Americans oftentimes, even if not Jewish, are circumcised. Some of the most like the consumers of porn and self-indulgence and all sorts of sins is far more apparent and available.
We have a lot more access to that here in the West, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot more addictions.
It's more tolerated. Yeah.
And a lot more addictions. Like, I've never seen more addicted people to one thing or another than in United States. It's just the self-control is quite low.
Well, and Christians aren't called to be circumcised anymore, right? Because the circumcision now is a circumcision of the heart. The idea of, you could even make an argument that the idea of removing the outer layer of the heart and exposing the sensitive part of the heart, to the world, right, and to God, right? Just like removing the foreskin and the most sensitive part of man's member. Christians aren't called to be circumcised anymore. If you're Jewish, or born in a Jewish family, that's hereditary, genetically Jewish, but you're a Christian family. Sometimes you still see some circumcision, but it's not something in Christianity anymore because God has made a new covenant, and so things have moved on, right? I mean, Christ Himself says the new covenant is the Eucharist, right?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
but in America, like in the medical establishment, people do get offered, and like it's a common practice,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it doesn't. Yeah, it's super common here in the United States, and it doesn't need to be done. It's not actually more hygienic. The theories back in the early 20th century were wrong. Um, it's actually much better to have your foreskin. Especially if you want to enjoy sex with your spouse even more. There's no reason to be doing it,
But also, it
and
just
it's
makes
a
no
unique thing.
logical sense how exposing something will be more hygienic than keeping it, you know, covered. Like
Yeah,
if I have this shirt on, I am more covered and protected than if I don't know. It's just crazy.
yeah. The theory was if you don't clean underneath it, then infections. I don't want to get too graphic. I mean, this is already an episode about penises. Babies' penises, to be specific, here. So,
And of course, the
and
disturbing visual of just that whole thing done, especially if it's not even done in a hospital and done by like a rabbi as a ritual and stuff. Oof.
well, this is 4,000 years ago, so you're talking about like Flintstones.
Increasing the chance of infection 4,000 years ago. What are you cutting it with?
Yeah. So I wanted to bring up also the 8 day being circumcised at day 8. So this is actually really important. People gloss over this. First of all, it's more practical. I mean, you want to wait for the baby to at least be week old, and before you start doing surgery on the infant, right? So that's there's a practical element there.
Good point.
But the number 8 is the number of the resurrection. So we have to remember Christianity. Number 7. So God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh day. Right? 7 is the number of completion. 8 is the number of resurrection. I think we talked about this in a previous episode, how Sunday is both the first day and the 8th day, right? And Sunday is when Christians celebrate the resurrection of all of us. So it's interesting how the day 8 here is still in line with the number 8 for Christian resurrection. And what's really interesting, if that's not enough there for you to follow me, if we follow the tradition that Christ was born on December 25th, that's day 1, which means he was circumcised on day 8, which would be January 1st. So the first day of the new year is the day of Christ's circumcision, which is the 8th day, which is also the day of a resurrection, a new year, and a new life.
Except
All of that together.
everywhere else in the world, his birthday was January 6th.
Well, that's
It's
because
just
of a calendar
America
issue
that's
that happened.
25th.
That's a calendar issue that happened later on.
But we should
That's a long story of
probably,
how that happened, yeah.
yeah, we should probably finish the chapter though. I just
Yeah,
forgot that we
okay,
haven't
exactly.
finished.
So, let's finish this up. Next is Isaac's birth promised. So, God said, circumcise every man and child,
And
slave
slave.
as well. And God said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she shall become nations, and kings of peoples shall come from her. Then Abraham fell on his face again and laughed and said to himself, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. There we go, Abraham trying to come up with his own plan because he doesn't trust God. Still doesn't trust God. And God said, no, but Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac, which means laughter. So God's like, all right, you're going to laugh at that? Well, now your son has to be called Laughter. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him and will make him fruitful and multiply him greatly, just like he said to
Hagar.
Hagar in the previous chapter. Right? He shall be the father of 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year. When he had finished talking to him, God went up from Abraham, up in space. Abraham took Ishmael his son and all those born in his house or bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and he circumcised the flesh of their foreskin that very day, as God had said to him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, and Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. That very day, Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised. And all the men of his house, those born in the house and those bought with money from a foreigner, were circumcised with him. I think we get the picture. Lots of foreskin flying everywhere. Foreskin
a lot of
all over
a lot of DNA samples. The every time it says like he fell on his face, it's like you imagine all of a sudden God is like, boo, yeah, it's like, oh, dude, it scared me, and then falls on his face, and then God says his piece, and then psh, bounce.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think it's funny how Abraham laughed, and God's like, all right, you think it's so funny? Well, your kid's going to be named Laughter now.
Yeah. So it's interesting because here specifically says that this I don't think this came to me before, but it says she shall become nations, kings of peoples shall come from her. So that's very interesting because anytime we look at history, anytime we look at any part of history, we rarely really read about Jews as people. Rather, it's always mentions Jewish elite, Jewish elite, Jewish elite. So when we talk about the Pharisees and the Essenes and the whatevers and the, so every time Jews as people have been kind of like almost sidelined and sometimes sacrificial, but the elites, it seems to be what the story is about, because who cares about the rest? so those who write the story, they choose to usually write about the elites. But so that's very interesting. But then it's very interesting that it
mentions
says
it mentions the kings and stuff, but also in the other promises, I don't remember how explicit it is here, but talks about multitude of nations, many people. So
yeah, but
focusing more on the kings here, but
yeah, but specifically from Sarai, because Judaism is maternal. It's through the maternal link that they decide.
From Sarah to Isaac. Yeah,
exactly.
Isaac. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's not saying your offspring anymore, kind of like how Abraham was going to be his offspring. You could think that Ishmael is part of that, right? But here specifically saying that from Sarai there will be kings of nations, right?
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, because Abraham could go get other wives, but God said no.
But it's
it is
specifically
only
from this horrible woman. Yeah, from this terrible,
this
horrible. Yeah. And then what's really quick, not to lose my train of thought. And then what becomes very interesting after that is the 12. What did he say about the 12? Ishmael, I will bless him. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. So I don't know why that makes me think of the supposed period of the judges and the 12 tribes of Israel.
No, it's not the 12 tribes of Israel.
I know.
These princes are mentioned later on, though. Yeah.
They are mentioned specifically later on? Okay.
Yeah, they're named later on, yeah.
Okay, so because I was like, separate. Some sneaky stuff happening here or what? But okay, we'll get there and then we'll see.
What I do want to mention here is all of these promises to Abraham of all his offspring will be nations, plural, nations, multitude of nations, not just one nation, right? Not just one nation that just happens to exist in the modern time, right? Not just the modern state of Israel. This is nations, right?
Yeah.
And even the Christian dispensationalists will point at this and say, oh, this is talking about Israel. The modern state is of Israel that was founded in 1947. And it's like, no, it's clearly saying nations. This is talking about nations throughout the world. This is God starting his process of trying to heal the world through people, right? Rather than flooding the world, he's going to try to heal people and use them to heal the world so we can participate in his healing of earth. Nations, not just one.
Yeah, and it is very interesting because it says that Ishmael gets circumcised too, and actually majority of Muslims do get circumcised, even though it's not explicitly in the Quran,
Do
but it
they?
is in the
Okay.
yeah, but it is in the I want to say Sunnah.
Mm,
It comes from
mm,
basically Prophet Muhammad in the Sunnah, so it's
sure.
not in the Quran, but it is in the Hadiths.
And the hadiths, yeah.
So a
It,
lot of Muslim male are circumcised as well. I have a
Sarai
theory
means,
brewing. Go ahead.
oh, do you want to talk about this? I was going to shift the topic real quick, but do you want to talk about the theory or not?
Very quickly, but we don't have to dwell on it, so that we can get to whatever you were going to say, and then we're inching up to an hour. But I'm starting to, the conspiracy hat on is all speculation. I'm just obviously all of this is speculation because we really cannot evidently check anything like 100%. But more I learn, because like a decade ago I studied the Quran. Like I actually read the whole thing. I studied it with an Arabic person because they used to say, oh, you have to read it in Arabic and all this. And at the time I was focused on the Quran and seeing it in isolation and looking at Islamic culture, behavior, people, and all that, right? So then now that I'm reading Judaism and the Old Testament, as well as contrasting it with the New, I'm starting to think that Islam is a Jewish invention.
Jeez. You should
Yeah.
cut that out.
No. I think it's a Jewish invention.
How is, okay. Well, we won't get into that. We'll take the conspiracy hat off for now.
Okay, you can talk about.
I have a fun conspiracy about Christianity being a Jewish invention. I love to make my own conspiracies. So
Well, that could be, but it backfired a little bit because now they just really, really hate Christ to a degree they want to kill him all over again.
conspiracies take you all sorts of wild places. So to finish off,
I
this
told you you're
history-
gonna start getting uncomfortable here.
Uh, so the last thing I want to mention, Sarai means princess. Sarah means also kind of means princess, but it's more like queen. And so God changing your name changes your identity, changes your role in the world. We talked about this in another episode, I think. But I want to emphasize that, Adam was tasked with naming the animals. What that means is he was tasked with giving them their identity, their purpose, their role in the world. So when God changes someone's name, he's saying, I am changing your purpose or your role, your relation to me. So Abram goes from Abram to Abraham, which means father of many. Sarai goes from princess to basically queen. And in a way, it's kind of saying, hey, Abraham, you need to treat your wife better, treat her like a queen.
She doesn't deserve it. She's a bitch.
Different world back then, but yeah, they haven't been great all the time. But God changed their name and said only through Sarah is the blessing going to follow through, and it's going to be in the son named Isaac, who will be born next year. And then God flies away.
It explains a lot why the world is in such shitty condition. Because if Sarah is the bearer of kings, then this is why, the world is in the condition it's in.
Well, it's,
Horrible. She's a horrible person, so she's going to be a horrible mother. And then horrible king's going to be born out of it.
well, the one good thing about the Old Testament is that it's showing that God even uses not just imperfect people, but even people who aren't very great. He can still use them to further his healing of the world. If the Old Testament was just stories of nearly perfect people, it would feel like a God who can't relate to us because we're all pieces of shit in different ways. Some way worse than
God
others.
created us. So if God created us, then it's so psychologically messed up because if God created us and He's the Almighty, that means He literally has the might to create whatever He wants. But He decides to create. What this tells me is God is a self-indulging thing that just loves to be entertained. So He's just like, let me just stir up the world however I want and just see what happens. And then just keeps just pushing and, creating wars and famines and genocides and, keeps rewarding those who apparently seem to be very satanic while punishing those in the name of, oh, you're just going to suffer until, I don't know, something great happens one day, and then generation after generation, nobody sees the greatness. We only see that the powers maybe end up winning over the rest of the humanity. And a few elites end up always on the top, while majority of humanity is constantly suffering because of their actions. So this is God. This is this God. So needless to say, our God, or my God, is battling, but maybe should change the tactics a little bit and not turn the other cheek.
We have to, remember, go back to the very beginning. God actually created a perfect world. He created Eden, right? Paradise. In fact, Eden and paradise, at the very beginning of the Bible, the correct Christian understanding, the Orthodox Christian understanding, is that when we're resurrected, heaven is often called, is Eden. We're returned back to Eden, right? And so God's actually desiring to bring people back to the perfect world. And what we're in right now, we're experiencing good and evil, right? It's the knowledge, the fruit of the knowledge, fruit of the tree, the knowledge of good and evil, the experience of good and evil. And that's what this universe is. This universe is the experience of both things together. We have goodness everywhere. We also have evil everywhere. And that experience is something that God said, I don't want you to experience that. Don't eat from that tree. Right? We're the product of that tree. So we're experiencing that. But God wants us back to the perfect world that He created, that He originally intended for us to be. And so after we pass from this world, the Christian promise of Christ is that we will be resurrected and brought back to paradise.
Well, if I take that at face value, it makes God a very terrible parent still. Because, again, due to observation of human psyche, you do not tell a child, don't do this. If you're going to say don't do it, you better explain why. God actually not only doesn't explain properly why, He lies and says you're going to die. And then,
No, they did die.
They eat. No, they didn't die. Their eyes were opened and they started seeing good and evil. They start seeing that God is actually kind of, that particular God is a little bit evil.
We never did, you and I never did the first few chapters together. We should go back and do this. Because there's a lot to talk about there. I just covered a small portion of that. But ultimately, it comes down to free will. God, if we're God's children, we're God's replicas, which means we're given powers that God have, which include the ability to make our own choices. And what God wants us to do is make choices that are good for us, that extend our life, that make our life full of joy and love and cooperation with others who also have free will.
Exactly.
And we're experiencing good and evil. We're in a universe that's filled with good and evil rather than paradise. And God says, don't worry. You're only here temporarily. After you pass, I will bring you back to paradise.
Yeah, but the way to, if you're going to give free will, right, which is good, you should have free will, then you should give them the tools and the education to understand how to use and be responsible with that free will, which is, I would say, what Jesus was trying to do, because Jesus's philosophy and teachings were extremely nuanced and extremely, some might say, contradictory, because you can kind of look at his message and realize that he was probably a very highly misunderstood person, because and today's Christianity, we can clearly see that he was highly misunderstood, because some are saying this is Christianity and some are saying no, that's Christianity, right? Because clearly by following the same guy's words, we cannot even decide what is Christianity like as a unanimous thing. But what that God did in the Eden, he created a communist utopia and said, do not ask questions, just chill. I got you. No, that's not free will. That's ignorance and handouts. It's just not a perfect world. It's communism, actually. It's very communist. It's Marxism. Technically, Garden of Eden is the utopia that today's elite world is trying to build.
Well, yeah, that's the whole issue, is that Eden is utopia, right? There's everything for everyone, everything's shared. There's no power imbalances. Everything's operating where it should be. People
Except
are where
God.
they need to
There's
be.
God.
Everything's cooperating perfectly. It's peace and love, right? You still have free will, and if you choose to not participate, you end up getting thrown out, right? The problem is that requires a spiritual state to be able to participate in that world, which is why communism doesn't work here, because communism is trying to take a spiritual reality and turn it into a physical reality without the spiritual changing of people's hearts.
It's ignoring the human element, human nature.
Right. Right. In order to have a paradise, you have to have people who can actually live in paradise without screwing it up. And that's kind of the point here, that given eternal life is actually one of the scariest things you could possibly be given. If when God says, okay, you're going to live forever, you can do whatever you want, what kind of person are you going to be? Could you actually live in paradise, or would you start messing it up and be kicked out? Right? If God said you're going to live forever, there's no consequences, do whatever you want, most of us would become demons. Most of us would end up falling into selfish desires, and we wouldn't be able to participate in paradise because we don't have God's spirit in us. And so before we're brought into paradise, if we want to be able to stay there, we need to be able to be transformed. And that's the whole idea of Christianity, is that through Christ, by being like Christ with God's spirit, we can be transformed. So when we're brought into paradise and we're given eternal life, we can stay there.
Yeah, and there cannot be kings and peasants and slaves and this and that, because the second you create that separation and differentiation between some are elevated above others, then you can never have coherent message that all people can eventually one day follow the same God, follow the same moral principle. Because there's so many religions and philosophies, and each one is following their own moral code, and oftentimes those moral codes are very different and in contradiction with one another.
Yeah. If you try to build a car and parts of the car are trying to act like a car, and other parts of the car are trying to act like a rocket, and other parts of the car are trying to act like a cheese grater, it's not going to operate very well. All the parts need to be in cohesive union for its purpose, which is being a car, right? And the same thing with God's children. We are all supposed to be in cohesive union with our purpose, which is love and life, and being right with God's spirit, right? Eternal life, right?
Yeah,
which is what Christ is. And so,
yes, I would agree that on the Christ
we're
message.
all spiritually transformed.
Yeah, I definitely would agree that on what Christ was trying to do, not seeing that at all in this God.
Yeah, but heaven's one beautiful communistic orgy. That's probably what it is.
Seems
nobody
very
needs to be circumcised anymore up there.
On that wonderful note.
Yeah. If you're circumcised, please leave a comment below. Let us know the state of your phallus. Please don't do that.
Yeah, let's not.
Unless you want to. I mean, I don't care. Whatever.
But yeah, what a topic. What a topic.
It's a unique marker, but I think there's a lot of meaning behind it if you just kind of think about it. Exposing the most sensitive part of you in the private place where only you and God know, which at the end of the day is going to be your heart. Exposing that to God is part of salvation.
All right.